Question from City Cent.
Yeah. How do you present, like, say you notice that in a family member, you make an appointment with a neurologist or a PCP. How do you best communicate what you've been seeing? Because it's overwhelming when you see a family member that may be having issues. So, like, how would you, in like a concise way, communicate to a neurologist?
Yeah. How would you communicate to a neurologist in a concise way concern about a loved one? Yeah, that was a question from City Cent off camera. Yeah, that's a great question. It could be difficult. It could be scary, frustrating. It can be extremely vulnerable. You don't want to act like you're shaming or insulting your loved one. Of course not. I think it's important to bring notes in, to kind of like jot down notes about the symptoms, like to kind of like, as you experience these foibles, to write them down, maybe in your notes app on your iPhone, and then bring them in, and do your best to present them in a non-judgmental way. Like, hey, this is something that's like, we don't know if we should be concerned. We're not concerned. Maybe we should be. We don't know. And to just kind of flag that to a neurologist to then maybe do some follow-up testing. I think that's crucial. But I think that the really important part is to not, this could be embarrassing. This could be, if presented the wrong way, it could be perceived as judgmental, as shaming. You just want to be really careful, and I think lead with love. And I'm not saying this as a professional. I'm not saying this as a, somebody who, works with patients. I'm not a medical doctor, but I am somebody who had a loved one with the condition, and it could be really challenging and really difficult. And in my mom's case, I had the unique experience of my mom. My mom was always aware of her cognitive decline, and I think that that's just where every case of dementia is different. Once you've seen one case of dementia, you've seen one case of dementia. But and it can be startling, it could be unsettling, it could be, I think as a loved one with a family member with cognitive decline, there's the tendency to want to gaslight yourself, because this is something that's typically, it can be really difficult to accept. So you just have to, I think, all that being said, it's not something to be brushed under the rug. So you have to lead with love, and you have to make sure that you make that appointment. You have to bring them to see the neurologist, not because you're shaming them, but because you love them. And I think that's really important. And also, there was something that I read about a couple years after my mom had passed, and it made me think differently about how I had shown up for her. And it broached the concept of therapeutic fibbing. I know we're getting kind of off topic of the question, but no, this is important. When somebody is struggling with cognitive decline, there's a tendency to want to correct them, to quote unquote teach them, to help nudge them back onto the correct way of thinking, or to lead the horse to water, and to help them arrive at what you think that their initial thought may have been. But therapeutic fibbing is actually, that can be a stressor. Therapeutic fibbing, on the other hand, is a really compassionate way of just going along with what the person is saying, incorrect as it may be, and having compassion for them, because cognitive decline, it's not their fault. So yeah, I hope that helps. Moving on. Do you have any daily habits to stay mentally sharp? Haley Valine asked that question. So yeah, I think I've already touched on a lot of this stuff, but I do my best to, work out regularly, keep that fresh blood pumping up to my brain, which is really important, to kind of keep track of how many hours I've spent sedentary, which as a writer, I'm prone to spending a lot of time sitting on my butt, writing, with my face immersed in screens, whether it's the little screen or the medium screen or the big screen. And I think it can take some effort these days to kind of push yourself away, but it's always worth the effort, because just simple movements, non-exercise physical activity, can go a long way towards helping to oxygenate your brain, to pump fresh blood and nutrients and oxygen, glucose up to your metabolically hungry neurons. And so I do what I can to, get adequate movement in over the course of the day. I even fairly recently bought a treadmill, like to go underneath my desk, my standing desk, just so that even if I've got like a deadline and I'm hard at work on a writing project, I can get those steps in. And I do on my walking treadmill. It's great. It was like $200 to $300 on Amazon. So that's really important. I guess another thing that I try to do, which I didn't mention earlier, is I try to get adequate sunlight in through my eyes. Relatively soon after I wake up, I actually moved to a home that had better natural light in the main living areas, because my prior house didn't have a lot of natural light. And I wanted to reduce the friction so that every morning when I wake up, I'm able to get natural light into my eyes. I even wear a sleep mask now as a means of reducing the friction to getting in natural light into my eyes first thing in the morning. So rather than having to get up out of bed to raise my shades, I know, we've maybe talked about it on the past, like years ago on the podcast, and wellness influencers are always talking about the value of blackout shades and the like. But I actually think it's kind of cool to not have any shades and to just wear a sleep mask, and then to be able to, from bed, remove your sleep mask first thing upon waking, and then allow the light from the bedroom to enter your eyes. It's a great way to make sure that first thing in the morning, before anything else, you're anchoring your brain's circadian clock. And light is the, primary time setter that does that. So I'm trying to get natural bright light into my eyes. Doesn't have to be, I'm not looking straight into the sun. Doesn't even have to be a sunny day. It can be an overcast day. But the bright ambient light of day is going to be way brighter than any artificial light. It's going to be full spectrum. And that's really important for making sure that you stay mentally sharp. It's crucial to pump the brakes on melatonin production. A lot of people that wake up prematurely, like with an alarm clock, for example, their melatonin levels are still elevated. And melatonin is, that's at odds. Having elevated melatonin levels is at odds with insulin sensitivity. It's also at odds with being at your most cognitively sharp, because, melatonin is typically secreted in the later hours of the, in the evening hours, as a means of helping us wind down and becoming, more creating an environment that's friendly for sleep. So, yeah, that bright light is crucially important. I also drink coffee. I drink caffeine. Caffeine is great from the standpoint of staying mentally sharp. It's a stimulant, obviously, but there's really good data now linking caffeinated coffee to better health outcomes across myriad domains, whether we're talking cardiovascular health, reduced risk for neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, even multiple sclerosis. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of coffee. And, that's pretty much it. Eating a nutrient-dense diet. I don't hyperfixate on glucose spikes. I know a lot of people make a big deal about glucose spikes. I don't really believe that they are as big of a problem that they're often made out to be. But I do try to just stick primarily to whole foods. And in so doing that, the food matrix does a lot of that grunt work for you in terms of making sure that you're not over responding to a carbohydrate rich meal. When you've got fiber, when you've got water, when you've got fat, when you've got protein, blood glucose spikes are not something that you have to micromanage. On the other hand, if you're eating mainly ultra processed foods and drinking sugary beverages and the like, your blood sugar is going to be a roller coaster over the course of the day, and that can impair subjective cognitive function. So you just want to be kind of mindful of that. Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.